Hello everyone, back at it again in my little yellow kayak. Today we're doing something a little different. I'm targeting stock trout with soft plastics. Now, some people, their favorite way to fish for stock trout might be with night crawlers on the bottom, or maybe power bait or power eggs. I do a little of that when it's super cold. When I feel like it's too cold to be in the kayak, or it's too cold to fish comfortably with my fingers exposed, that's when I'll switch to those bottom fishing rigs. Or maybe your favorite method is trolling. You know, that's not my favorite. I like to cast the trout and try to fool them. It's just more engaged, I think. At least for me. Anyway, this is the way I like to do it. But I made a mistake here. I left my net at home. And if you've ever tried to grab a trout by hand, they're very wriggly and slippery, and they don't have a convenient handle on them like largemouth bass or even smallmouth bass. So they're kind of hard to grab. And I'm fishing with a ultralight rod. It's very light power ultralight rod that I built myself, and I really can't control the fish very well. The good news is I'm fishing a fairly heavy leader for trout, which is 4-pound test. That's heavy for me, and it's mono. So I've got a little bit of shock absorption built in there. So even as I'm fumbling around trying to get my hand on this fish, he's not breaking me off. The leader I'm using is Suffix Ice Magic 4-pound test. It's pretty thin for 4-pound test. I use it a lot ice fishing too. And I found it's a really good leader. It's pretty clear for mono. Trout don't seem to mind it too much. I finally got my hands on him. Yeah, there he goes. Wriggles out of my hands again. But easy release. You know, one of the things about soft plastics is I'm fishing with a single jig hook, so it doesn't hurt the trout very much or at all. They're easy to release. If you're keeping fish, you can sort through them and keep the ones you want. Like for me, generally, I'll let all the browns go, all the brook trout go, tiger trout go, maybe keep a few of the smaller rainbows and let the big ones go. And that way, there's more interesting stuff to go and catch next time I'm out. I'm fishing in early fall here, and as the water cools off, well, first of all, the bite's going to get better, but also the fish they're putting in now or that have made it through the summer, there's a good chance they'll hold over through the winter. Like this one. So I figure if I can let a bunch of them go, they might get a bit bigger this winter and into next spring. And it's fun to catch them all through the winter. As long as we don't have ice. The ice fishermen kind of do a job on them too, so not that there's anything illegal going on, it's just that with 5 traps through the winter, they can really hammer them. So if we get good ice down here, they kind of put a dent in the trout population, but as long as there's no good ice. I caught those last 2 trout back to back, and as I was doing that, there was a guy fishing on shore, and hip waders it looked like. And he kept getting closer and closer to me as I was catching those trout. And I decided to head out towards the middle and see if I could pick off one more before I switched ponds. It seemed like they were kind of clustered in the northeast corner. I don't know why, but I find that's a pretty common pattern. It might be just because the southwest wind stacks up, bait and larvae and flies there, and when it calms down, the fish are still there. I'm not really sure. Maybe it's because of the sun angle. The water's a little bit more comfortable for them there. The water is cooling off, but it's still pretty warm. I was actually kind of surprised to find them as shallow as I did. Some of the trout I was catching at this pond, they're probably in 5 feet of water, and my kayak was sitting in 10 for a lot of the time. Once again, I have to try to land this trout without a net. The best way to grab them is right behind their pectoral fins, their front fins there. but they're still hard to get a hold of. You know, if I was fishing on shore, I could kind of ease them up onto the shore and grab them like that. Out in open water like this, there's nothing for me to hold them against other than the kayak, and they don't spend a lot of time against the kayak. But this is a good reminder for me to remember my net for next time. You can see how well that jig hook sticks them. I'm fishing with a 1/13 ounce Cocho tungsten jig head. It has an owner hook in it, and it's got kind of a, I think, a beak point. I forget what they call it. But it does a good job. There he is. I got a good hold on that one to show him. It does a good job of holding the trout, even if you forget your dad and they're flopping all over the place and wriggling and doing cartwheels by the boat. But that was it for the first pond. So I switched ponds. I went down the road a little bit and hit up another trout pond. And it didn't take too long to find the trout at this pond. And it was a little bit easier here, actually. There was a hatch going off. They looked like small black midges to me. I couldn't tell exactly what they were, but there was trout rising to the little flies and the hatch going off as soon as I got here. I'm not keeping these trout today, so I'm taking off my kayaking glove so I don't mess up their slime coat. Probably makes it a little harder to get a hold of them, but I'm trying to take good care of these fish so they last through the winter. That one's got a little bit more color to it. Wonder if that one was stocked this spring. I can see a little bit of pink on him, a little more pink. See if I can grab him this time. There he is. Hook pops right out. Thanks for playing, bud. You know, with the net, I can just scoop him up and the fight ends up being a lot shorter. So that's definitely a better way to go. Also, when the water gets colder, I was getting my sleeve all wet, and yeah, you don't want to do that when it's cold out. Right now, it's still in the 60s, so it was cooling down towards evening around dusk, but you know, the water isn't really that cold yet. What's that? I think that might be the brown I caught. I caught a brown too. Don't remember. Let's see what he looks like. Yeah, that's the little brown. He was in tight to shore feasting on the hatch that was going off. You saw a bug just fly across the camera there. I know they're kind of hard to see. But at this pond, the fish were even shallower. Some of them were as shallow as 2 feet. We'll get to see that a little bit later on. But basically all I was doing, see the rise over there in the top left corner? All I was doing was putting myself kind of in the middle of the hatch. And then, you know, the fish aren't feeding on the soft plastics. Obviously, they're feeding on little flies and larvae and things like that. The bait I'm using is called the Berkeley Power Nymph. And it looks a little bit buggy, maybe like a dragonfly larva or a crawfish, but it doesn't look anything like a black midge. But they still go for it. You just have to show it to enough trout and eventually one of them will go for it. You can see how shallow I am right there. I'm off kind of a long tapering point, and the kayak started out in probably a foot of water, and I might be in 2 feet of water now, casting out a little bit deeper, but it's real shallow. Maybe, you know, maybe where my lure landed, it was 5 feet deep. So, you know, if you wanted to target some of these fish doing something like trolling, it'd be really hard to troll through and catch these shallow fish. You just hang up on bottom. You know, same thing with even fishing bottom rings. The tendency would be to cast out into deeper water. These fish were shallow enough you could almost step on them if you were waiting. It's just something to think about the next time you're out trout fishing. They're not always in the middle of the pond. Although there were some fish rising in the middle of the pond too. From my experience, those tend to be holdover rainbows. And they're a little bit smarter too. This one's a little brighter. Not as colored up. I wonder if he's a fresh stocky or maybe a holdover. Some of the holdovers get kind of dark, like gray. Others get real bright. And I think it depends on almost chrome. I think it depends on, where they're feeding in the water column and how deep they are hanging out for most of the year. I'm not really sure, to be honest, but I can tell the different colorations of different trout. Alright, thank you all for watching. I really appreciate it. Just like all my other videos, I'll list all the gear in the video description so you can duplicate what I was doing out here today. Hopefully have some good success. And I'll list my favorite net in the video description, so unlike me, you can remember to bring a net for a trout. It's really very helpful. Alright, I'll catch you on the next one. See ya!